Namaste. What a beautiful time to read another chapter of my master's book, Lone Seeker, Many Masters. It is written by Swami Anand Arun, who is one of my masters. And now I'm going to read the fourth chapter, and it is about Raman Maharshi. I have been in his ashram in Tiruvannamalai. It's very beautiful. You should go and see it yourself. Raman Maharshi. Raman was in silence most of his life, and his silence was totally alive and powerful. It would take seekers to a deeper space and transform them more than did the discourses of many masters. Just one compassionate glance by him would bring deep peace and contentment to many of his devotees. Raman Maharshi was also the master of Papaji, and Papaji was the master of Gangaji. And Gangaji was one of the masters of Samarpan, whose name now is Soham. Yeah. A beautiful picture of Raman Maharshi. Here we go. A Ra saint lived in South India in the last century. His name was Raman Maharshi. Although fully enlightened, he lived the simplest of lives and remained mostly in silence. He was born at 8 a.m. on December 30th, 1879 in Tiruchusi, a small village in Tamil Nadu, 30 kilometers from Madurai, the famous Hindu pilgrimage in South India. He is considered the Anshavatar, part manifestation of Shiva. Raman came to his abode, the Arunachala hill, 200 kilometers east of Madras, at the age of 17 and lived there for the next 54 years. Arunachala is thought to be the Kailash of South India and is considered a physical manifestation of Shiva. Raman's father, Sundaram Ayar, was a rural lawyer who was known for his honesty and purity. All the people in the area respected his honesty and truthfulness, even thieves. One day a group of thieves stole goods from a bullock cart. When they found out that the goods belonged to Sundaram, they promptly returned it. Even the thieves did not like robbing him. His mother, Alagama, was also equally pure and saintly. When Raman was 12, his father died and the family's difficult times started. Since they lived in a joint family, Raman's uncle, Subir, took on the responsibility of Raman's family and they moved to his house at Madurai. Subir loved Raman dearly. He was admitted to Scott's middle school, but Raman had no interest in formal studies. He would rather spend his time playing, wandering around, and meditating in the nearby temples. Raman was known in his village as the boy with the miraculous touch. If someone had a stomach ache or a headache, they would be instantly cured if he touched them. When guests came to their house, his aunt would make sure that he touched all the food because she had experienced that if he touched it, the food would cook quickly, taste better, and would be enough for everyone. When just a child, Raman was fascinated by a book about the 63 famed Tamil Shiva devotees that he had found in his uncle's house. Raman also wanted to be a Shiva devotee and would spend hours meditating in the Shiva temples of the area. he would be completely mesmerized by the spiritual energy of the Meenakshi temple. He would not understand the spiritual phenomenon and would think that he was having a fever, but the experiences that there would be utterly blissful, and he started to frequently visit the Meenakshi temple to have those experiences. One day an elderly relative came to visit Subir's house. Raman asked him where he was from. When the relative said that he was from Arunachala, Raman was thrown in a sudden ecstasy. Raman had often heard of Arunachal, but when he realized that a holy hill was a real tangible place on earth that man could visit, he felt a magnetic pull towards Arunachal. An event that occurred when Raman was 17 brought about a great turn in his life. One day in mid-June 1896, he had the experience of death. In his own words, the shock of the fear of death drove my mind inwards, and I said to myself mentally, without actually framing the words, "Now death has come. What does it mean? What is it that is dying?" He felt his consciousness leave his body. His body lay dead, but his consciousness felt fully alive. For the first time, he experienced the eternal nature of the soul. This event made him absolutely introverted, and he lost all interest in his studies and any other external work. Annoyed by his lack of interest in anything, his brother Nagaswami scolded him. "You don't know how to study, and neither do you help out in household chores. It is better that you become a wandering monk." Monkhood was not new to Raman's family. Once a yogi had come to his ancestors' home begging for alms. When he did not receive anything to teach them a lesson, he forewarned, "May there be a monk in each of your generations." Maybe it was because of this incident that Raman's grandfather put on the ochre robes of a monk and left home with a staff and a water pot. His father's elder brother also became a monk while visiting some relatives and never returned home. But Raman was to become the most famous monk in the family. One day, Nagaswami asked Raman to go and pay his college fees and handed him 5 rupees. Instead of paying his brother's college fees, Raman used the money to go to Arunachal. When he found out that it cost 3 rupees to reach Arunachal, he left 2 rupees in an envelope along with a note for his brother that became famous later. It said, "I'm leaving home in search of my Lord, as it is his wish. This is a spiritual journey. None of you should be sad, and don't waste money and energy to try to find me. I haven't paid your college fees. I have taken 3 rupees, and the rest of the money is in the envelope." When he reached Madurai station, it was already past the departure time of the train to Vilupuram, but miraculously, it only left once Raman got on it. A Muslim priest who suddenly appeared in the train saw that Raman was divinely possessed and asked him where he was heading. The priest then informed Raman that the train was going to Tiruvannamalai and disappeared as mysteriously as he had appeared. Raman reached Tiruvannamalai on the morning of September 1st, 1896, where after the darshan of the Arunachal temple and hill, he went into a deep and blissful trance. After that, he never left Arunachal till he left his body on April 14th, 1950. When he reached Arunachal, he had very few possessions with him. However, after the darshan of his beloved Arunachal, he decided to get rid of whatever little was left with him. It included a little money, food, and clothes. He tore a piece from one of his shirts and turned it into a loincloth, which became his only possession from then on. he started meditating inside the temple of the 1,000 pillars. When others of his age saw that he was entranced in deep meditation, they started to play pranks on him. Some would come and shake him, while others would throw pebbles at him. When the young Raman was fed up with their pranks, he left his spot and started meditating in the basement of the temple, where there was a Shiva Linga, which was called the Patalingam. The youth stopped bothering him there, but the Patalingam was heavily infested by insects, since no sunlight reached there. The insect bit him all over his body, but Raman, who was in deep samadhi, took no notice. Seeing such deep vairagya, detachment in a young boy, a local sadhi, Shosadri Swami started to care for Raman. He started protecting Raman from the local boys as well as from the insects. He then shifted Raman to a safe place in a different temple. Slowly Raman's vairagya and his ability to sit in one place, drowned in bliss for days, made him famous in the area. Curious folk started to coming to have darshan of this silent young saint. Raman spent time in various temples of Tiruvannamalai, and in the end he came to the Virupaksha cave in the Arunachal hill. Eventually Raman Maharshi and the Arunachal hill became synonymous with each other. Due to his presence, Arunachal became famous around the world. If someone came and asked him a question, he would only gaze at the questioner with utmost compassion. After a while, the questioner's question would disappear, and he would be filled with great peace and spiritual fulfillment. The superintendent of British police in Vellore, F.H. Humphreys, came into contact with Raman Maharshi in the most interesting manner. Humphreys became the superintendent of police of Vellore at the age of 21. Due to his past life sanskars, Humphreys was a clairvoyant seer and regularly had spiritual visions. While meditating, he started to frequently see the vision of a young saint clad only in a white loincloth sitting on a hill. He made a sketch of his recurrent vision and started showing it around. The locals said that it must be Raman Maharshi of Arunachal. Humphreys came to Arunachal on his motorcycle all the way from Vellore, 87 kilometers away. He parked his bike at the base of the hill and started scaling it in his heavy policeman's uniform. The extreme midday heat and the uphill climb left Humphreys exhausted and parched. Raman was sitting quietly under a tree as usual. When Humphreys came near him, Raman kept on looking at him without blinking. They were both of the same age. Humphreys couldn't take his eyes off Raman's gaze. After 15 minutes, Humphreys felt as refreshed as he had never been before. His exhaustion disappeared, and he felt as if he was bathing under a fresh spring. Humphreys had come there with pointless spiritual questions, but in Raman's presence, his questions started to disappear. Neither did Humphreys ask any question, nor did Raman have to utter a word. Humphreys felt so light that he thought he could fly. Without saying anything to Raman, he started to climb down the hill. He was so elated that he spontaneously broke into a dance. While climbing up, he was a serious police officer full of questions and queries. On returning, he was happy and joyous like a little boy without a tinge of worry on his face. Such was Raman Maharshi's magic. Humphreys was Raman Maharshi's first Western disciple, and he visited him frequently. His love for Raman started to grow, and he asked him if he could leave his profession and give up Christianity. Raman said, "No, you need not renounce anything at all. If the need to renounce is so great, then why don't you renounce your assumption that you are this body? Search deeply within for your real self. To go into this search, there is no need to kid your profession or your religion. Due to the past life sanskars, Humphreys had various spiritual powers, and after walking on the path led out by Raman, his powers only increased. He had an unconscious desire to display these powers, but due to the continuous guidance of Raman Maharshi, these desires vanished as well. When his meditation ripened, he didn't have the will to continue his profession anymore and resigned from his job. He then started to live and meditate in an ashram in England. Along with Humphreys, there were a few other seekers from the West who knew the value of Raman Maharshi and made him known to the world. Among them were Paul Brunton, Arthur Osborne, S.S. Cohen, and Major A.W. Chadwick. The English journalist Paul Brunton had come to the East to get answers to his spiritual queries. He traveled around the Indian subcontinent for years, meeting various yogis and visiting countless ashrams. He met many yogis with yogic powers and many others who were yogis just in name. But no one was able to pacify his quest. He then came to meet Raman Maharshi on the council of the Shankaracharya of South India. When he reached Arunachal, local pilgrims showed him the way to Raman Maharshi's ashram on top of the hill. Raman was sitting quietly among some devotees. When Brunton got there, Raman Maharshi didn't pay him any attention. Questions raised in his mind, but since everyone was in silence, there was no way he would ask them. Raman didn't speak even after 30 minutes and kept staring out the window. Brunton, who carried the ego of a famous journalist, was hurt by this total disregard of his presence. But after another silent hour, Brunton started to feel that his questions were worthless. Their importance started to drop as he entered a world of silent bliss. In Raman Maharshi's presence, Paul Brunton's questions completely dropped. He felt peaceful and content. Such was the power of Raman's silence. Raman was in silence most of his life, and his silence was totally alive and powerful. It would take seekers to a deeper space and transform them more than did the discourses of many masters. Just one compassionate glance by him would bring deep peace and contentment to many of his devotees. Another such example is that of the Tamil woman Echamal, who was in a miserable condition when she came to Raman Maharshi. She had gone through a series of painful events that had devastated her. While she was mourning her husband's death, her daughter and son-in-law also died. Not being able to handle this, she lost her mental stability. Her relatives had taken her to various saints and holy places so that she might regain peace, but it hadn't helped. When she arrived at Tiruvannamalai, she heard the name of Raman Maharshi and she climbed Arunachal to meet him. She found him sitting silently in front of the Virupaksha cave. She came in front of him and stared at him for an hour. Raman also poured his compassion on her. This silent satsang brought great change in her, and her sorrows started to drop one after another. As dusk approached, she left Raman's transforming presence reluctantly and climbed down the hill. The moment she reached the foothills of Arunachal, she was no more the same person. Her heart finally found calmness and peace, and her sorrows left her forever. After this incident, Echamal bought a house at the foothills of Arunachal and started living there. For the next 30 years, she made lunch for Raman Maharshi and fed him every day before she took her own meal. Her house became a free lodge for the devotees of Raman who had started coming from all around the world. She spent her entire life and savings serving Raman Maharshi and his devotees who came to meet him. Raman Maharshi was the epitome of simplicity. He lived what he preached. It so happened that the first president of independent India, Dr. Rajendra Prasad, came to visit Raman Maharshi in his ashram at the base of Arunachal. The ashramites started cleaning and decorating the ashram for the occasion. It was the tradition at Raman ashram to feed animals first, followed by the beggars and guests. Ashram residents would be the last to eat. This practice started by Raman is still in play in the ashram. On that day, the beggars and monks were told to stay under a tree a little further away from the ashram, and they would be fed there. The president came and went straight to Raman's hut to meet him. But he was not there. Everyone was perplexed because Raman never really left his hut. The president waited for him there, and the ashramites started to search for Raman throughout the ashram, but couldn't find him anywhere. After a long search, they found Raman sitting under the same tree designated for the beggars. The ashram residents persuaded him to come back to his hut. Once he reached the hut, Rajendra Prasad touched Raman's feet in reverence and asked him why he was sitting with the beggars. Raman answered, "It was repeatedly announced in the ashram that the beggars should go and wait for the meal under that tree. I also have been a begging monk my whole life. That's why I went and stayed with the other beggars." Osho has said, Raman and Ramakrishna are the manifestations of purity and detachment. Just remembering them can bring peace and serenity to one's heart. Raman Maharshi used to say that silence is the most powerful and unending form of speech. For those who do not understand silence, the master uses words, but with great difficulty. This is because truth is beyond words, and words can never explain it. Someone asked Raman Maharshi, "Why don't you give discourses?" His answer was, "People don't change even after listening to hours of spiritual discourse. They return without any meaningful change in their being. But if they just sit silently in the presence of a saint, a certain purity seeps into their being. Silence is the most powerful action and initiation." As I have heard, a famous educationist of Nepal, Sri Rudraraj Pandey, reached Arunachal while on a pilgrimage. While performing puja to the Shiva Linga at the Garbhagriha of the Shiva temple there, he saw an image of Raman Maharshi sitting in the place of the Shiva Linga. Being stunned by the mystifying experience, he went to the base of the Arunachal hill to have a darshan of Raman Maharshi. As far as I know, he was the first Nepali to have the darshan of Raman Maharshi. It has been more than half a century since Raman Maharshi left his body, but such events still occur in the lives of many devotees. In November 1989, I went on a spiritual tour to South India with a few of my friends. One of our destinations was Arunachal. The closer our bus came to Tiruvannamalai, the more blissful I felt. We took a rickshaw from the bus station. I was so eager to reach the ashram, and the pace of the rickshaw was so slow, and I felt like getting off and pushing it so that it would gather some speed. When we had the first glimpse of Raman Ashram, my heart started beating violently. I was so touched by the sight that for a while I did not have awareness of my body. It was difficult to find accommodation in the ashram during winter. Most of the visitors were staying in guest houses near the ashram. I really wanted to stay in the ashram itself, so I met the coordinator V. Venkataraman, nephew of Raman Maharshi, and pleaded with him to let us stay there. He realized that we had traveled a long way from Nepal and saw the desperation in our request, so he took the trouble of moving people around to prepare 2 rooms for us. We found out that anyone who wanted to stay in the ashram had to make prior reservation. The reservation included free accommodation and food for a maximum of 3 days. Those who were lucky enough to find ashram accommodation did not have to pay, but they could donate according to their wish. We were very happy to get rooms there, and I wanted to donate 1,000 rupees immediately, but Venkataraman said the donations were only taken at the end of the stay. When I insisted he take the donation right away, he heeded my request. The main attraction of Raman Maharshi ashram is the room where he had stayed. My friends started to say that they wanted to go there immediately, but I persuaded them to have a shower and change into fresh clothes before visiting the sacred abode of Raman. We spent as much time as possible in Raman Maharshi's room for the next 3 days, sitting silently in his formless but intense presence. Apart from Raman's room, the place that attracted me the most in the ashram was their kitchen. While in his body, Raman Maharshi would wake up at 3 in the morning and go to the kitchen to prepare breakfast. He would always be the first one there. Other ashramites would join him later. Raman Maharshi breathed life into anything he cooked and made the tastiest meals. The kitchen rules of Raman ashram might appear rather absurd to a visitor. Raman Maharshi believed that variety in cuisine distracts a seeker's mind. Thus the same recipe is prepared in the ashram 365 days a year. Idli, coconut chutney and coffee for breakfast, rice, sambar and salty buttermilk for lunch, 1 cup of coffee or milk in the afternoon, and again rice, sambar and buttermilk for dinner. If a devotee brings something special, it is distributed equally among everyone. Some of my friends were worried at the prospect of eating the same thing every day. Osho has said, food in hotels might look good, but it is usually dead. There is no life force in that food. Simple food cooked with love might not look attractive, but it is alive and it is full of prana energy. This is why the food made in temples, tirthas and ashrams have a special taste and give a different kind of satisfaction. Simple vegetarian food is made in the Suchata kitchen at Tapoban, our ashram in Kathmandu, but most who eat there praise the food. They are actually praising the prana energy of the food. It is because Raman Maharshi spent years cooking in the kitchen that the food there has a divine quality. I have not tasted such good food anywhere else in the world. I have always been hypnotized by the food in Raman ashram. Day after day, the plain recipe of the ashram grew increasingly tastier. The food was so fulfilling that after finishing my meals, I felt like eating the banana leaf as well, on which the food was served. I realized that honesty and purity fills each mundane thing with divinity and bliss. There is no daily program at Raman ashram. Ashramites begin the day chanting Sanskrit shlokas at the samadhi of Raman and his mother. Just as when he was in his body, Raman's room remains open for everyone today as well. Most of the seekers who come there spend their time sitting in silence at that room. Some who can climb the Arunachal hill also visit the Virupaksha cave in Skanda ashram where Raman had stayed before he came down to the bigger ashram at the base of Arunachal. Arunachal is a famous tirtha for all Hindus, but it has become famous around the world due to Raman ashram. Seekers come here from around the world. During the winter months, the area around the ashram is teeming with international seekers and tourists. Many stay here for as long as their visa allows them. The whole area vibrates with strong spiritual energy. There is an otherworldly peace and beauty in this place. I realized here how one enlightened person can charge a place with the vibrations of truth that is helpful for seekers even years after he has left his body. So this is all about Raman Maharshi in Arun's words. I also went there, and it is really a very, very beautiful and divine place. And while reading this chapter, I could really feel the energy of this beautiful place. Yeah, you should go there and visit. I also stayed in the ashram for 3 days, and it was for free, like Arun mentioned it. And afterwards, I was staying in another ashram around, and there are many ashrams, so I'm sure you will find an ashram to stay there and spend time there. It is really a divine place. And it also made the round about the Arunachal Hill, and it's said that it is very good for spiritual seekers to go around the Arunachal Hill, and I rounded it, I think, 2 or 3 times. I think it was at least twice. Yeah, I would recommend you to do that as well. It is really wonderful to do that. Wishing you the best, sending you love. Bye-bye.